that was the Busch Clash. And now we're going to get into our top 5 this week. And this should be the last one. Kind of a last-second field filler. Kind of like at BJ McLeod Racing.
Oh, that's not nice.
Burn, man, burn. And this week, last week we did our drivers who didn't quite make an impact or not so top 5 NASCAR drivers. This week we're going to do our top 5 racing games. That's it?
Yeah, top 5 racing games.
This was a tough list for me.
Was it?
Yeah, this was a tough list.
Well, how many games have you played?
A lot. A ton of racing games. I love racing games. Love it.
Oh, see, the only racing games I've played is between NASCAR and Formula One, so I can only rank those.
Well, and once I read the list, I mean, there's one on here I know you haven't heard of.
Okay,
but I have
I'll be
such
curious.
fond memories of it. But since I started last week, Preston, you're going to start this week. What was your number 5?
Oh, number 5.
Your number 5 video game, and folks on the live stream on YouTube, give us your top 5 racing video games. It'd be fun to compare the list.
Number 5 I'll probably put NASCAR Thunder 2002 in there. That's the PlayStation days.
Right.
So most of my list is going to be comprised of kind of that era. Because the later games that were made, more recent, I haven't, especially the NASCAR Heat games.
Right.
No, not a fan of those at all. If I could put those in like some of the worst racing games, I would. Because I feel like the NASCAR Heat games in the recent years, they're too arcade-ish.
Right.
They just don't really give a lot.
I feel like that with, regardless of what generation it was, what year it was, I feel like if you're on the console games, it's arcade games.
I don't know. The PlayStation games weren't actually really that. I think the PlayStation ones, like 2002, are a lot better than the more recent Xbox of NASCAR Heat. Now, there's a game, I can't remember what year, I think it was like 2014 to 15, which it was okay. The graphics were okay, but you couldn't do a whole lot. It was just you could run the Cup Series and that's it. You couldn't do anything, and I don't like those.
Never been a big fan of the console games. I've never been a big fan of those.
I'm curious, though. I want to hear your number 5.
All right, number 5 for me. It was 20 years ago that I first got introduced to NASCAR. 20 years ago. I've almost like looking at retirement. If watching NASCAR was a full-time job, I'd be looking at retirement. Unfortunately, it isn't. But I tell you this. I went to this place as a mystery trip for a youth trip. And I went there, and if you go back and listen to our pilot episode 1, bad quality and all, if you could look through that and listen through that, you'll hear this story. So I'm not going to give too much away. I sat in a full motion simulator and I raced this and I won Silicon Motor Speedway. You remember those full motion NASCAR simulators?
Like in the mall?
Like in the mall.
Yeah, I do remember those.
It was my first exposure really to NASCAR. And after that, I was hooked. For 20 years, I've grown from an average fan to a podcaster to an over-enthusiastic amateur. And I tell you, man, that's where it all started for me. So that's why that's number 5. But I'll give you the pros and cons of why I liked the game and why I didn't. And you should do that from 4 through 1 as well.
Okay.
So the pros were, it was a full motion simulator. You sat in the car, you had the switches, you had the shifter, it was loud, it was full motion. And it was fun to play. It was fun to do. The cons. You maybe, depending on the track you ran at, 5 to 10 laps. And that was it. Maybe 7 laps at like a Daytona. And, for the price of admission, it was like maybe $20 a pop to do it. And it's just one of those things where I wasn't really committed to doing it. Plus, I didn't have it close by and could do it relatively easy. But Silicon Motor Speedway, my number 5.
Okay.
And 20 years later, look at me now. Look at me now.
I'm just, you asked me to do pros and cons, but I don't remember a whole lot about these video games very well. That's the thing.
All right.
I haven't raced these in so long. Number 4 would probably be, I'd say the NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup game. PlayStation as well again.
Oh.
Listen, those people sleep hard on those PlayStation games, the early ones. I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's a lot better than these more recent ones.
No.
You get more control. You get more, you can do a lot more. Like these, I felt like these were a little bit more involved. So let's say for this, the PlayStation games, you were more team involved. You could sign sponsors,
right,
which you can't do in some of these other ones. But I mean, you got to sign autographs.
I remember that.
Yeah, see, like things like that. You had more.
Like fans will heckle you if you missed it. It's like, oh, you're a jerk.
Yeah, you had man, what's the? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Just you had to do certain things.
Yeah, it was a lot more like
detail,
mini games and like life of a driver and press conferences and stuff. I remember those, but at the same time, it was fun to play. But I never really got into I would play the console games and I would buy the console games only out of necessity, because I never really had a good enough computer in order to play the good games.
Okay,
in my opinion. But
now I will say this: when you the last one you just told me about, what it was kind of like one of those motion sim ones,
right? I
think I can insert something into this top 5 now, because if you're talking about that, then I have some.
Wouldn't you consider that a video game?
Yes. So then in that case, I do have some. I can insert the top 5 later on in the show. And Stone is going to know what it is.
An honorable mention.
Yeah, Stone is going to know what it is.
All right, number 4 for me. NASCAR Silicon Motor Speedway was really my introduction to NASCAR. It really was. However, back in the late 90s, I had a friend of mine who was a big NASCAR fan. I wasn't crazy about it. But he had this game, and we would sit on the computer and play with the keyboard for hours. NASCAR Racing 2, made by Preparis. You remember that game?
NASCAR Racing 2?
NASCAR Racing 2. It was a simulator. They marketed it as a simulator to where you could just click on it and get on the racetrack, practice, qualify, and race. And the physics were awesome. I mean, it was the first time I ever played a video game where the hood, when you hit the wall, would crumple.
Oh, okay.
However, it wasn't the physics weren't there yet where you could go airborne. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times I tried to go airborne. No matter if you went the wrong way at Talladega and hit the field head on and destroyed everybody, nobody would flip. The physics have gotten better with that. Not saying that's a fun way to do it, but sometimes you just want to turn around and see what would happen. But that was my first really introduction to the NASCAR video games. Not NASCAR, the NASCAR video games, and just how much fun it could be. And the pros were, it was the first 3D based NASCAR game. So for the time, 96, 97, 98, you look at this, it's like, those are awesome graphics. Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't have the Daytonas, but they had the Rockingham, Bristols, Richmonds. They had all this good stuff. And the racing game after that, NASCAR Racing 3, was really awesome as well. That didn't make it into my list, but this one did, because the nostalgia of the game. And I played it on my keyboard. I would play for hours just trying to figure it out. A was accelerate, Z was slow down, A, Z, A, Z. So the graphics for the time were great. However, I had no wheel that was compatible for it later on. And you'll see that in number 3, why that turned out to be important in the late 90s.
Okay.
All right, number 3.
So before number 3, that was funny how you talk about how you would try to get the car airborne and go backwards and all that other stuff. Stone and I used to do that.
Yeah, well, there was a special patch or special thing you had to download. It was called the Flip patch or something. Uh-huh. But see, what would happen was it was such a first kind of gen. It was just still developing. Preparis was, which Preparis, by the way, was the precursor to modern day iRacing.
Oh, okay.
That the physics weren't there and the computing power wasn't there, so somebody came up with this flip patch. But it wasn't, the cars wouldn't go airborne. No, the cars would molt. You know how whatever molts a butterfly would shed its cocoon or whatever. A cicada. Mm-hmm. Cicada? Is that what it is? The cicadas who would shed their shells?
I guess. I don't know. I'm not.
Anyway, it would be like the patch would make a duplicate of the car. So if you're going down like this and you hit something hard enough to flip, it would just be like that. Your car would be there, but it would just flip. And you just flip. Just like that. I really don't know how else to put it, but that's what happened. And at first it was like, oh, that's cool. But then when you see tons of, it's like confetti of race cars, like poof. It's like, oh, this is kind of horrible. So I'm glad that the physics have gotten better and everything like that. I got some stories coming up here I could tell you because I got a good one here. If Charlie's still on, you could back me up on that.
That's pretty good. I like that.
All right, so
That was
number 3, buddy.
number 3. Again, back to the.
I feel like this isn't your list.
This is. I had to go back and look at some of these games to make sure I got them right.
Oh.
So I was because I had to remember what the exact names were because I used to have all these games, but I think they're somewhere at my parents' house in the attic, along with the PlayStation.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I still have all that stuff. So, number 3, NASCAR 2006 Total Team Control. And one of the cool things I found about it was it introduced being able to radio to your teammates in the middle of the race, which was interesting. But I think this game was also where you could switch between cars during the race, and I wasn't too much of a fan of that.
What game is this again?
NASCAR 2006 Total Team Control. I had to
remember that.
You do remember it?
Yeah, because I would always be joining Team Hendrick, and I would always be in the back. So I was like, I'm going to be Jimmy Johnson. And race up front.
That's the one thing I didn't find too fun about it is that you could radio for help and all that, but you could switch switch cars. I wasn't too much of a fan of that.
I remember saying to hey Jimmy, come back and help me. He went, no. No, I'm not going to do that. Hey Jeff, come back to help me. No. Brian Vickers, come back and help me. No.
Yeah, that's funny because I think Hendrick was the first team that I decided to play with after the introduction because I think Hendrick Motorsports was the introduction in the game. When you first loaded the game up, if you were starting a new game for the first time, they did that. Stone's asking why I said his name, and I mentioned it. Stone and I used to, years ago, like 2005, I remember it, was the Daytona 500 weekend. No, it's not this. It's not this. We used to drive backwards. I took a console. Me and Stone's family, we went to, we went to the mountains, and for like 2 days in a row, we were just playing NASCAR games, but we weren't taking it seriously. We'd start a race and we would drive backwards and see how many cars we could take out every single time.
Oh god!
So that's why I remember that much. But
okay,
yeah. So
that was your number 3.
Yeah, but my other 2 are much different than consoles. Well, one of them is a console still technically.
Oh man, I can't wait till my number 3 here. Back in 1998, I received a Christmas gift. And it was a Microsoft Sidewinder steering wheel. One of the first generations of steering wheels to have force feedback.
Oh, okay.
It came with 2 games, a monster truck game, and this one game called Microsoft Kart Precision Racing. The graphics were 1998 graphics, what you would expect in 1998, kind of 2D, 3D ones. But it was my first introduction to open wheel racing. I'm talking, I learned about Alex Zanardi, Jimmy Vasser, Greg Moore, and I learned about all these tracks. And I learned and it was so funny because I would try my hardest to race these tracks well. And I would always be like Greg Moore or Jimmy Vasser or whatever. And I would always hit the wall and my front wing would fly off and it's like, Vasser has lost a wing. He's really torn up. And I didn't understand it, so it's like I'm staying out. Because I'd always set it on easy and just fly my way around. And like when I was 2 laps ahead of the field, I was like, oh, now I'll pit.
Right.
But it was so much fun. It was my first introduction to open wheel racing. Again, a nostalgia moment for me. And, like I said, I learned about open wheel racing. I learned about the Alex Zanardis and the Jimmy Vassers and Greg Moores and Chip Ganassi Racing and all these guys. The cons are I crashed a lot because I really didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, well.
So it was just one of those games where it's like, meh. I'm sure now I could, get it somehow and play it, and it would be just so much fun. Because those are little nostalgia games that the graphics aren't the best, but I remember just sitting there for hours just playing it. Mm-hmm. Playing Michigan, playing all these, road courses, attempting to play. And I would wreck a lot because I didn't understand what I was doing, but it was a lot of fun. So... And it's a game that a lot of people really, I don't think, remember and aren't on anybody's radar. Microsoft Kart Precision Racing.
I've never even heard of it.
And yeah, it was for the PC. All these games are for the PC, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
When it comes to racing games, PC is the way to go for me. Not console, PC. But that was my number 3. Preston, what's your number 3?
Oh, number 2, you mean?
Oh, number 2. I
I'm on 2.
I apologize.
2. So number 2, I'm going to step away from the console games here for a second because I got an idea from your number 5. And number 2 has to do with the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and Stone knows where this one's going. Stone and I went to the NASCAR Hall of Fame back in 2017, I think it was. Stone, you can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 2017 in the springtime. We went to Charlotte for hockey games, and we were staying in downtown.
Right.
And the hotel we were staying in was only it was like 2 or 3 blocks. 2 or 3 blocks from the Hall of Fame. So when we got there that day, we said, let's just go to the Hall of Fame. So we went. And so your admission, your price of admission got you, they had this like simulator, kind of like a simulator. There was just a bunch of cars, and it was almost like sitting in the cockpit of a car. They had a big screen inside of it, and almost like a bucket seat, and shifter, steering wheel, everything.
Whole 9. Yeah.
Whole 9. So you competed against like 20 other people that were there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh,
it was
my gosh. It was like a demolition derby, I'm sure.
So the track of the week was Michigan.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, I got this. This is going to be a piece of cake. This is going to be nothing. And I got in, and I started probably near the back, and it was a demolition derby. And guess who came out unscathed?
Brian.
Me.
Oh.
I lapped everybody. I won the race by 2 laps.
Wow.
Yeah, I made it look like it was nothing. I got all the way up there, and that was it. It was a lot of fun.
Somebody get this guy a contract.
Oh, listen, I walked out of there like I was the best thing since sliced bread after that.
Like Conor McGregor.
And of course, I went up to Stone and said, hey, Stone, how did you do? I don't want to talk about it. So it even says I wrecked on like lap 1. See? Yeah. Yep. But it was funny. When everybody started wrecking, I was like, oh, crap. It was literally right after the green flag drop.
I know.
So I slowed way down, and I just did this little number, and then I just shifted all the way, forgot the 4th gear, and that was it. And people were still wrecking all over the track, and 2 laps ahead. It was no big deal.
Oh, this guy.
But that was a lot of fun. That was really cool, though. Right. It was a really cool experience.
So that was your number 2?
Yeah, that's my number 2.
I need to check that out. I have yet. As big of a fan as I am to go to the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I don't know. It's a great. I can't wait to go back again.
We need to go there together.
We do.
And we'll vlog it. There you go.
We should.
There's our next project.
We should.
We should. It's right down the road, too.
Yeah.
All right, my number 2, a game of which I spent countless hours playing. I'm Preston. When I say this, I didn't go on dates in high school. Never had time for a girlfriend because I was playing this game.
I don't think I'm going to know what the game is.
NASCAR Racing 2002.
Okay. Is that PC?
PC.
Okay.
NASCAR Racing 2002. I started playing this game after I became a fan, so I knew the drivers, and when they go, and it helped me learn the tracks. When they went to Rockingham, well, let's click on Rockingham and see how this works. Atlanta, same thing. Michigan, all these tracks that the guys would go to during the 2001-2002 season were there, so I played it. Daytona, I learned how to draft playing that game. And what was cool about this is the realistic graphics and gameplay and the physics. So you could flip. So you could do that. And you got, if you went online, people made these custom cars with custom paint schemes. You could download those, put those in your game. And for the longest time, I raced Looney Tunes Pontiac.
Nice.
Just because it was so unique and so different.
Yeah.
It was my car. And it was so much fun. And the only con I have of it is I didn't play it enough. I wish I could have played it more. Because I bought one of my first paychecks, I bought a NASCAR steering wheel with a sequential shifter, the whole 9. And I felt like I was awesome. I had to use my dad's laptop because I didn't have a computer. I'd sit there, crank it up, just bang, just race all day. And that was the story where I put the video camera behind my head, and my dad came in and thought I was watching the race. He's like, "No, you're playing," and I had the helmet and everything.
Nice.
Yeah, and he said, "I'm worried about you." NASCAR Racing 2002.
That was the day.
Hours. And the crazy thing about this game is I played it up when I was going to NTI with another fan of ours, Robert Keller and Charlie. We set up computers and have dividers and race against each other. In fact, Robert at one point wrecked out at Daytona. Then he wrecked out, spun out. And so he turned around and went backwards. And I'm maybe like 15th. Runs head on into the field. I'm the only one that made it out. I said, I won. I said, your plan was foiled. But that was a lot of fun. NASCAR Racing 2002, and that was a tough one because it was between that and NASCAR Racing 2003, which you can't find anymore. NASCAR Racing 2003, it's like a jewel within the NASCAR racing community because that was the precursor to iRacing.
I feel like NASCAR 2003, I think there's still a community out there for that.
There is, and I got it, but I need to get a CD-ROM for my computer to
Yeah, they
load
do
it
a
up.
lot of patches to it and stuff like that because they have like almost like the up-to-date cars in it.
Yeah, and you could get mods for it and, update the tracks. Like, you could get the monster cars. I had the Monster Indy cars. You could get Indy cars. You could get Xfinity cars, truck cars. I mean, you could get anything you want. It's a really cool series, too. It's a lot of fun, and it's time-consuming, man. And it's free. It isn't like iRacing where you have to pay for this track. Or, oh, this car came out. No, that's it. And, man, that's it. And NASCAR Racing 2002, man. Hours playing it.
Awesome.
But you're number one. Well, okay, I'm curious to see. What's your number one?
Well, this is, you're probably already going to know. My number one is in part thanks to you.
You're welcome.
I got your old steering wheel set up. So you know where this is going. Formula One.
Okay.
2020.
Recent
I
game.
have spent so many hours on this game. Thanks to you, thanks to getting your old steering wheel set up. Steering wheel with the paddle shifters and the pedals. It's overall, I mean, this game has been nominated for various awards in the gaming community so far this year. I mean, the graphics are awesome.
Right.
The racing is great. There's so much you can do with it. It's just, there's some things I don't like. So, like, one thing I don't like is, yes, you can start your career in Formula 2, but I wish you could, like, create a Formula 2 team. Like, that would be cool to do. Like, what if I just want to strictly race in Formula 2? That'd be neat. But other than that, it's a good game. There could be some other things that could be added to it, but I think that's one of the big things for me is why can't I make a Formula 2 team and just race Formula 2? Because you can't go and do it. So when you start a career, so like when you're doing the career, if you start in Formula 2 and do the whole season, you don't get to do in between. So like if you're in Formula 1 season, you have to buy parts for the team, or you earn things, you can integrate parts in there, do R&D and stuff like that. But like with Formula 2, if you start Formula 2, it just goes from weekend to weekend. That's it. You can't do anything to the car. Well, the cars are equal anyways, but still, there's still things in between that. Like in the Formula 1 career, you have like different invitational events you go to and stuff like that. But in general, the racing is great. I've spent way too many hours on this game, probably.
I would say the only Formula 1 game that would be an honorable mention for me is Formula 1 99. It was like Formula 1 for 99. And the reason I say it was a PlayStation game.
Okay.
And I would play third person, so top down. I would play top down, and I would race only one track. That was my favorite track, and it was Hungary.
Okay.
And I got to the point where I knew all the shifting, all the stuff. I got where I could do that sub 1 minute.
Oh,
I kid you not. I would lap Michael Schumacher.
wow.
Again, I had it on easy.
But still,
even on easy, sub 1 minute, I'd be in a Jordan.
But still, to get everything down to how many times you're going to have to shift before each corner. I mean, that right there takes a lot.
One of our family friends named Bill, he would come over, and I'd just talk to him about racing all the time. And I say, Bill, you got to check this out. Look what I figured out. I said, I could beat this track in 1 minute, less than a minute. And so I'd get out there and do it, and he'd say, that's awesome.
I have to give it to you. That's a lot to get down anyways, just to know how many times you got to shift.
Yeah, I had no life this was in high school
I mean,
as well.
just think, I've spent a lot of time on this Formula 1 game, and even I have not been able, even though I still race mostly automatic, it's still, when I'm racing, I try to think about how many times I'm going to have to shift anyways. So when I get to that point finally of figuring it all out.
You're overthinking it, man.
I don't know, man.
You're overthinking
it. I don't know. I do a lot of. I spend so much time on the game that I probably will do almost all 3 practice sessions in full.
Right.
So.
Well, I tell you what. That was your number one, Formula 1 2020. My number one, and probably no surprise to you, iRacing.
Yeah, that's.
And this is the best and most realistic sim on the market. Not only is it NASCAR, But you have late models, dirt late models, sprint cars, road course, oval for both asphalt and dirt. I mean, it's just a whole community. No matter what you like, you can race prototypes, you can race formula cars, you can race Indy cars, stock cars, late models. This is the game. Now, the downside to that is each car costs $12. 12 to 14 bucks. Each track costs 12 to 14 bucks. And even the tracks that were from NASCAR Racing 2003, there was this 3-mile, 36-degree bank track called Coca-Cola Speedway. They took that and turned it into iRacing Speedway. And all the fans of the NASCAR racing games will know that track. So they didn't have to go out there and scan it. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to do a few graphics changes and update stuff. And they charged $12 to download it. I think it should have been free for everybody for Christmas 2020 for everybody, but that's just me. But iRacing is so much fun that Charlie and I played last night, and he spotted for me in a truck race. And that's a great thing about it. You get on there with your buddy, hey, I'll spot for you, and he could spot for you, or you could spot for him. You two could race against each other and take care of that. And just many add-ons. It's a true simulation. You feel every bump in the track through the force feedback in your wheel. Great physics. You earn everything through safety rating, your licenses. You start off on the rookie series and in the street stocks and make your way all the way up to the A-class and NASCAR Cup Series. You earn it. The cons are, however, that it does cost a lot, and you're at the mercy of everybody else.
Yep.
You're at the mercy of, like yesterday I was racing a truck race and started 13th and didn't really figure it out, but I was getting better and better as the run came on, staying out of everybody's way and avoiding accidents, made my way up to 7th by the end of the race. But right before the end of the race, somebody got a little crazy and there was no place for me to go. I hit someone and got an incident point. And that affected my safety rating. I got a plus 0.01. I could have gone more because up to that point I had a clean race. So you're kind of at the mercy of everybody else, and you need a decent computer to run it. My computer right now can run it perfectly, no problem, load up fast. However, the computer that I sold to Charlie was, could be better, but it could be worse. But at the same time, you get in there, you play it, and it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I wish you would do it, and I want to start a In the Marbles iRacing League, but I don't know how many people right now will do it. But I tell you what, if we could get enough people to kind of comment on something, it's like, yeah, I'll do it. Maybe like 20 people, I'll do it.
I'll eventually get there. I would love to get into iRacing at some point.
It's a lot of fun.
It looks like a lot of fun. A couple times I tried it before.
It's very realistic. It's a lot of fun. And it's just time consuming. For me, I don't play it a lot.
I mean, look, when you put me in that race against, I think it was AIs on Daytona.
Oh, it's tough.
It scared the crap out of me.
Oh, it's tough.
I didn't know what to do. I was stuck in the middle of that pack. Yeah. It was the scariest thing ever.
In fact, yesterday, speaking of flipping, like we were racing that 3-mile, 36-degree bank track where you can run wide open and it's unrestricted. So you're running about 240.
Holy
and so
crap.
I'm working with Charlie, like, stay inside. And I go low because I got ahead of him. And there was a car stopped on the track. It's like, I can't go anywhere. And I T-boned him at 240 miles an hour. I went, poof. And Charlie said, I just saw you flip. It's like, I went away, buddy. I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm dead.
But that was my, your number one was Formula One games. So that was our top 5 racing games. Let's see what everybody else says. Ultimate NASCAR Simulation Experience. I've never heard of that, but that's from Jim at Unhinged Sports Network. James Maples is Need for Speed Underground, Formula One 2020, NASCAR Racing 05, and NASCAR Thunder 04. All good games. Need for Speed was on my list. MX versus ATV, it looks like, from Brian Stone. Midnight Club Dub.
I do remember the Midnight Club Dub City Edition game.
I have no idea what that is. And that was from everybody else. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Racing video games are a lot of fun for me. And that was our top 5 video games. Nobody got it, so nobody got a t-shirt. I'm surprised about that.
I'm not.
I think we covered everything else but video games on this show. Preston, you have any honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions? No, I don't think so. I'm trying to think because I haven't really. I mean, like I remember like the Need for Speed game, but I never really played that too much, so I wouldn't put that in there. Maybe the Midnight Club. I mean that game was pretty interesting. That was more of like racing through the city
Right.
And you could buy cars and just like customize it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that was a pretty good game. Maybe that would be an honorable mention, but I don't think I really remember any other racing games.
All right. Well, I don't either, buddy. It's okay. But
it's still so many out there.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into our final thoughts and wrap up the show. Get ready for racing at Daytona. Can't wait, buddy. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so we're going to go ahead and get to our final thoughts, but not before an ad read from Fanatics and a few from the Unhinged Sports Network. This is In the Marbles, and we'll be right back after this.
Hey, race fans. I'm Preston from In the Marbles. Like what you just watched, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. And if you're looking for more content, you can find some videos right here to the left of me.